Check 1, 2. Mic test. I'll turn it up a bit. I'll lock these in. Mic test 1, 2. Check 1, 2. I'll turn it up a bit.
Test, 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 test. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
We can adjust it a bit.
They can put it in their thing and yeah, we'll get it set up. Yeah, right. Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. It's 1 o'clock. I want to welcome everybody to coming to this Nutrition Authority event with Dr. Sue Finn. We're really excited to have her back and to have all of you here to talk about Nutrition Authority with our panel and with Sue. So my name's Carrie Hamady. I'm the chair of the Department of Public and Allied Health. And we're going to start with a video about Sue, and then President Rogers is going to say a few words.
Well, let me start out by saying that Susan Finn is an extremely passionate and visionary leader.
She's a warm and enthusiastic person.
Susan is a woman of great talent and impact.
Almost sounds like a person you'd always want to know, isn't it? We went to Berea High School together, but when I encountered her again at Bowling Green, here she was, a very diligent, hardworking, and serious student. And I think that's one of the more interesting aspects of her life, was that she lit up in terms of her intellectual interests in college, and then went on to become really a nationwide star in a field.
They say if you find your passion, if you find your purpose, you'll never feel like you worked a day in your life. And she truly embodies that. She found that passion at Bowling Green State University. She found it there and parlayed that to incredibly successful career, not just for herself, but for the profession.
She was a trailblazer. When she first went to Ross Laboratories, it was very unusual. In fact, I don't think there were any other registered dietitians who were in corporations, because she was the only person in her department. No one worked with her, and so she was sort of isolated, as it were. But she made sure that she developed a relationship with all of the key people, and in that way get accomplished what she would like to have done.
She has no problem being as an extrovert, and I think that probably helps her in terms of her communications with professionals in her professional setting.
Early on in her volunteer service, it was around the time she was president of the academy, and she's had a lot of volunteer roles. But at this particular time, she was focused on a project called the Nutrition Screening Initiative. NSI, or Nutrition Screening Initiative, is a national project that was developed to improve the nutrition care of the elderly. Susan was instrumental in getting this project off the ground and adopted by healthcare organizations nationwide, and it is still the standard today, thanks to Susan.
So she's kind of like a visionary, really, and could look ahead and see what would be useful and helpful.
It's never about Susan, it's about her passion for the profession and her true, deep, abiding love and appreciation for her colleagues, and her ability to see so many possibilities and try to bring them along.
Susan is a thought leader and then has the ability to strategically identify individuals who can bring results, who can have an impact. And I believe that was one of the important contributions that she has made in her life.
Susan is somebody who really could completely rest on her laurels, but she chooses to continue to support and be engaged in an incredibly productive way.
She worked her way, became a member of the House of Delegates, and then was a leader in the House, became the president of the association, followed by being the president of the foundation.
All of the work she did, all of the effort she put forward, all of the relationships she's established have paid off. And it's been a pleasure knowing her in so many phases of her life.
She is someone who has dedicated her personal life and her professional life to making the world a better place. And as a result of that, she has spent her entire career supporting and elevating the profession of nutrition and dietetics.
Do what you love. Follow your dream. Don't worry about whether it's the hot field at the time, because when you do something you love, you will find opportunities.
Thank you, and what a great video. So Dr. Fenn, it is going to be my honor to introduce you, but before I do that, I want to make sure I welcome everyone to the today's Nutrition Authority event. Certainly want to acknowledge Dr. Hamady and all of your colleagues, the faculty and the staff and the students of the Food and Nutrition program, really on all the work in coordinating today's event, our keynote speaker and our various panelists. Also want to acknowledge Dr. Sue Houston, who's going to lead the panel discussion, and she serves as our Vice President for Partnerships and is a former member, well, you're still a member of the faculty of Food and Nutrition at BTSU. And also want to acknowledge Dean Cecil, the Dean of the College of Health and Human Services, and all the great work that is going on in this college to address all sorts of things here in healthcare. And finally, I want to acknowledge a member of our Board of Trustees who is here, Judy Buddy. Trustee Buddy, if you could wave the trustees. The trustees of the university are incredibly important. They oversee and have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure our university thrives. And Trustee Buddy has been a great member of our board. She's president and CEO of GraceWorks Lutheran Services. But most importantly to this group, she is a dietitian and an alumna of the BGSU Food and Nutrition program. So as you know, our mantra at Bowling Green is we are a public university for the public good. And that commitment is making sure we are supporting our academic programs and empowering our faculty and staff, but most importantly, empowering our students to go out and make a difference in the world. And there are absolutely significant opportunities for professionals in the healthcare industry, specifically in nutrition, diet, and health. And we also believe, as a public university for the public good, that it is our responsibility, it's our responsibility to create space for dialogue and growth around important issues of the day for our region, state, nation, and the world. And this learning process is critical in our ability to gain perspectives from one another and collectively solve problems. That is what moves our society forward. And today, after our keynote, we will have an opportunity to hear from a panel of experts, including many BGSU alumni and leadership fellows from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And we absolutely want to make sure we engage each and every one of our students, because you will serve as the next generation of leaders in this space. So it's my honor to recognize and welcome back to campus I've got a little bit of things to say about you before you get up here, though. Welcome back to campus, distinguished BTSU alumna, Dr. Susan Finn, and her husband, Jim, who is also in attendance today. Jim, thank you for being here. So Dr. Finn, as you know, is a recognized leader and respected communicator in food, nutrition, and health. For nearly 30 years, Dr. Finn headed the nutritional services for Ross Products Division of Abbott Laboratories, now called Abbott Nutrition, where she advocated for nutrition screening and support. She was the chief architect behind campaigns to advance nutrition support, particularly for women, the elderly, and those with diseases placing them at nutritional risk. Dr. Finn has served as president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and has also served as chair of its foundation. Over the past several years, she's focused on strengthening the authority of registered dietitians as the profession moves into its second century, effectively communicating food and nutrition science, in exploring the intersection of food, nutrition, agriculture, and sustainability. Dr. Finn has been honored for her leadership in health and nutrition. President George W. Bush appointed her to the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports. And in 2014, then Speaker of the House John Boehner appointed Finn to the National Commission on Hunger, which assessed the hunger crisis in this country and recommended how government, along with private and public partners, can respond. Dr. Finn is widely published in professional journals as well as consumer magazines and has co-authored several books. Most recently, she's authored a book, Nutrition Authority, Perspectives on Opportunity. And in this book, if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, I love the first part documents the history of your profession. And it's so important that professions understand their history and all the work that went to create the foundation for that history. But it also talks about the importance of science driving the future of the profession, and finally challenges the profession to think about the important role they have in being innovative, creative, and leading in the area of food and nutrition to make the world a better place. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to introduce to you Dr. Susan Finn.
He's the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rodney. Thank you. You know, it is an honor to be invited back to your alma mater, which really helped form a foundation for my career and honestly, really a direction for my life. And I hope all of you as students find your experience here at Bowling Green as meaningful to your future endeavors as I've found for mine. Thank you all for putting this program together. Thank you, President Rogers. You could have given this talk. You got it down. Thank you, Dean Salisa, because you have made Health and Human Services sing on this Bowling Green's campus, and you had the great wisdom to promote Mary John Ludy to be a part of your administrative staff. And Mary John, you had the smarts also to promote Carrie Hamady to heading up the Nutrition and Dietetics Department. And of course, Dr. Sue Houston, whom I've known for many years, she has been on the faculty. She has done about everything, including she has been the chief of staff for you, President Rogers, and she now is in charge of partnerships. Couldn't be in better hands. Now you're going to see a panel up here, and it doesn't look like their faces now, but you're going to see 4 outstanding professionals. 2 alums of BG, Kay and Matt. And Matt is still singing high because he's from LSU, and you know what the girls' basketball team did. He's still smiling. And you're going to see Andy and Winona. They represent the Academy of Nutrition Foundation, the leadership initiative. They have their stellar performers, they're trendsetters, and you got two of the best people here as well to represent the Academy. And you will hear their story. I'm kind of a warm-up act for them, actually. Let me give a few comments about my book. And I wrote this book for the Academy's Foundation. All the proceeds go to them. I simply wrote it for them because I wanted to kind of get my views known. Why? Just because I thought I might have something to say, and I wanted to do that. And throughout my career, I have been so fortunate to work with so many outstanding professionals in many fields of nutrition and dietetic practice. And honestly, I've been taught by the very best of them, and some of them are right here on this campus, and I remember them well. I have observed and I've received advice from individuals in academia, in business, in healthcare, and of course, I've gotten a lot of advice from my friends at the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I saw firsthand what it means to be a knowledgeable, trusted, and respected voice. And that's why I wrote this book, to share my views of really the excitement that I have for our future, because we have great opportunities in front of us. I hope as students, it inspires you to seek challenges and opportunities, and that you join forces with others as we position dietetic professionals in the vanguard of health and wellness. It is absolutely so important that we do it now. The future has never been brighter, and I believe we need to travel this road together right now. It's perfect timing. What do we say in business? That window is open, and we need to move forward now. Now, this is a little book, and you might say, would it take you a weekend to write it? Au contraire, it did not. I spent a lot of time, it was many more hundreds of pages, and I knew you guys would never read this book. Now, some of you might be old enough to remember Ken Blanchard and Spencer Johnson's little book, 112 pages, called The 1 Minute Manager. In business, we all kind of read that. Well, he remembers, of course, The 1 Minute Manager was one book, and there were a whole bunch after that he wrote. Now, if you don't remember that, maybe you are a golfer, or you have a family member or friend that is a golfer, and you might see on their bookshelf Harvey Pinnock's little red book, Lessons and Techniques and Teachings from a Lifetime of Golf. Anybody play golf? You bet you got that book. My book's like that. It's concise. It's about 150 pages of what I believe can move us forward as nutrition authorities. I've included a lot of views. I interviewed about 30 people, and you'll notice along the sides I gave you their views. And all of them said, all things are possible. All things are possible. But you're going to have to create your own path. You're going to have to do it and show your value. Now, in framing my thoughts for this book, as President Rogers said, I looked at what was the past. I looked at what some of our successes now and challenges are presently. And then I thought, well, where do we go? We go to the future. 3 pillars, pretty easy, past, present, future. The issue I ran into is I had a point, and it belonged in all 3. Policy, science, food, they were all intertwined, and I couldn't do one without the other. And I think that's important to know as you go forward and you look at opportunities. It takes looking at back, it takes looking at challenges now and what's hot now, and it takes looking forward. One without the other won't work. So let's begin, first of all, talking about history, the past. Why is it important, the future, and what we do now? Well, some people say, really, history's pretty boring. Why am I going to look at it right now? We're talking about the future. I would advise that you look at one of Ken Burns' award-winning documentaries. Whether it's baseball, the Vietnam War, country music, the Mayo Clinic, national parks, whatever it is, I believe his words resonate. He says, why would we study the past if not to have exemplars for the present that could guide us into the future? Well, nutrition and dietetics has a long legacy. We have moved from hospitals and very traditional kinds of settings to many new areas, and you're going to see some of that and hear some of that from our panel today. But what came before us, our history, has application to how successful we will be in the future. You have to look at what was. I think Mark Twain said it best when he says, you know, history doesn't often repeat itself, but it sure rhymes. To help make it relevant to you, I opened the first section, the first pillar of the book on past, by interviewing Dr. Helen Zoe Veit, who's professor at history at Michigan State University. And for her dissertation research at Yale University, she focused on the historic role of food and nutrition practices. And she has 4 different books from that dissertation, and they're excellent. Here's what she said about learning about the past. History is more than dates and events. Studying history opens up our minds to different views and how we interpret the world around us. It teaches us that you're a part of a larger world. It helps us understand why we have certain beliefs, what were the forces at work at the time, and it helps shape events. It's important to our future to look at the past. When I talked to Dr. Veit on the Zoom class, she says, well, when somebody comes into your class, what do you teach them? She says, I teach big history because it shapes professions. She says it connects dots, patterns, and identifies ways certain behaviors are observed and seen. History seen this way requires a deep introspection of what's going on in society at the time and determines what we can learn from today's challenges. History is important, she says, and I've been in my share of boring history classes. Mine aren't boring, and after reading her books, they are not. Here's a good example of the importance of learning from the past. I look at the passing of the 19th Amendment, securing women's right to vote in the 1920s. Do you guys know it took 71 years to secure the passage of that amendment? 71 years is a long time for that to occur. Interesting, my husband and I were on a road trip, remember that, upstate New York, and we came across the exit to Seneca Falls. We said, all right, we're pulling over. Here it was. We went into the Women's Rights National Historic Park and visited the museum there. It was absolutely shocking and inspiring. Do you know the first conference to move that initiative forward, that 19th Amendment, was held in 1848, and it was Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Motts, and a group of other people she could pull together to push that amendment forward. It began a long time ago, and it was really surprising. You know, Susan B. Anthony is the face often of the suffragette movement. She died long before she could ever cast a vote in the national election. And I love what Ken Burns used to title, when he used a title on that documentary, he said, it's not for us alone. And that's the point. It was for the good of society. Here's an example that you can relate to. Every year, the Academy does a survey, and we ask people, you know, what's the most important issue? And I know you could all answer. It's how do we get paid for what we do? How do we get reimbursed for our services, right? That's the number one issue year after year. Look a little bit into the history of that. In 1965, Medicare legislation was passed. We weren't included. Many other services were. We were not included. And for the next 30 or 40 years, we tried. We tried with data. We tried hiring a lobbying firm. We tried eventually getting a Washington office. And waha, in 1990s, we had it all together. And we got passage of the Medical Nutrition Therapy Act in 1990s. That moved us forward. That opened a door because it reimbursed us for selected diseases, renal disease and kidney disease. I mean, that was so important, and we had nephrologists coming to our aid to help us pass that. They gave us an example of how we do it, and now we're on the throes of doing it again for many different conditions. Our work is cut out for us on that research, and we are moving forward. As a sidebar, let me talk about your role in this. Join one of the Academy's affinity groups, particularly the one on reimbursement, because it will lay out for you what the platform is, what the voice is, what you should do. We have to help make the Academy successful in this. Why do we have to help make Academy successful? because that's how you're going to be successful. And if you're successful, the Academy is successful. It's one and the same. Join that affinity group and work tirelessly, just like our reformers did, on reimbursement. So what does understanding of history tell us? We need to study broadly. We need to look at different points of views and interpretations of the same point. We need to seek challenges that are important to society, that are key at that time. And what does it take? It takes exactly what our early reformers did: passion, perseverance, a united voice, and the desire to move forward at the right time. This is exactly what the early reformers did, and it's exactly what we need to do as a profession. Look at your history and get involved. Pillar number 2, where are we now? Where are we in the present? Well, when asked about our profession, we were talking about it this morning, Judy Buddy and I were talking about it. Sometimes we say, well, we're a science-based profession. And I've said it too. Maybe you've heard that? What's it mean? Is it meaningful to patients? How about policymakers? They're going to move something forward because you're a science-based profession? How about reporters? They're going to cover a story? How about the public as a whole? Today, I fear it is not as convincing in and of itself. We have to do more. What's it mean when we say, follow the science? Just whose science? And how do we integrate that science into what I'm teaching people? I believe to be a believed, trusted, science-based profession, you have to go to the root at what makes an authority. Authority in any science. And according to Mr. or Ms. Google, it's 2 things. One is knowledge. This is, according to Google, an academic qualification that is gained through facts and understanding. The understanding and information that are acquired through rigorous educational and experimental processes. No surprise to you, that's exactly what you're doing here, and you must do it all of your life as part of lifelong learning. But an equally important part of being an authority is what's called, Google calls, the moral authority. And that's our credibility, our trust, our reliability, and our ability to inspire people. And that is earned too. It's earned by what you say and how you say it and how you act. Both knowledge and our credibility or our moral authority is an essential part of us being a nutrition authority. Now, we are very fortunate because our academy has tools to help us grasp evidence and science, and I am sure you have used many of these. The EAL, you've used the EAL. Best practices and all the guidelines, the validated grading systems, and of course the DPGs and now the affinity groups have information that can keep you current on what's happening in research. And what's really fun about this, when I wrote this, I interviewed some of the people that were involved in the early prototypes of developing these tools. I mean, they really enhanced our ability to grasp and to communicate research. In this book, I interviewed some stellar dietitians and research. I interviewed, for example, Linda Schnitzler. You all know that name if you read the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. She is the editor. And she says, I focus my ideas on first-time authors because she says, I know they need a good experience and we need such good research coming from our members. So anybody that's submitting a research report for the first time, we work with them. We want them to be really, really successful in this experience. We need good research coming from all of you in your work. Then I interviewed Dr. Allison Stiver, again, another Ohioan here, who heads our research team for the Academy. She's based up in Cleveland, but she has a research team all over the world, and she's gathering data, and she's running clinical trials, and she's forming databases that can help us validate our services and why we need to be included in anything related to healthcare because we're cost effective. It's very important that we use those tools and we help validate our research. They're important, but also important is to demonstrate to others our depth of knowledge and our understanding of anything we're referencing, how important it is others hear our views. That means you have to look at the methods, you have to look at the study design, you have to look at how you are interpreting the results, And if you find somebody that might think differently or have some kind of a comment about your research, have a discussion with them. Have your voice heard, and if you're in a much bigger forum at a convention, have a civil debate, because that shows your strength of voice as a nutrition authority. They hear from you, and you need to be well known as somebody who's very serious about research. Now today, of course, we want quick answers. I love what the late Charles Krauthammer said. Charles Krauthammer was a psychiatrist, I believe. He was a journalist. He was a neuroscience. He was fabulous, and he did a whole series of articles on science and published them in the Washington Post. And I love this quote that he said. He said, "There is nothing more anti-scientific than the very idea that science is settled, static, and impervious to change." Right? It changes. Or you could go with what my friend Ken Lee says. Ken Lee, Dr. Lee is head of food science at Ohio State. And he says, "Susan, just tell them that the research process is a process of discovery. And when we know more, we'll tell them." Well, that's perhaps one way. We have to be strong communicators of research. And this is not easy today with so many voices and the headline of the day making seeming controversy very common. One of the simplest and the most highly effective communicators of medical information and nutrition information is the late Bernadine Healy. She's Cleveland's own. She was head of the NIH during Bush 41's term. She started the Women's Health Initiative with great controversy because many didn't want her to do it. She then came as Dean of Medicine at The Ohio State University, where my husband and I got to know her pretty well. And then she went on and became the head of the American Red Cross. She had a very simple message that she used always, whether she was on television or she was writing a book. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. But you know what? Here's what I would recommend you do. Here's what we know about this vitamin or this nutrient or this diet. Here are the kind of questions that I have about it. But you know what? Here's what I would do. There's a credibility statement. And I couldn't help but think over the last few years what she might think of our COVID communications. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. But here's what I do. How much simpler that might have been. So what can you do to demonstrate now that you're a science-based profession? You're doing it right here, getting the facts, getting the information here at Bowling Green, getting your research base. Evaluate and look very carefully at that research, because just the fact that it's somebody's study doesn't make it so. Debate the findings or discuss them, and focus on communication, very simply, in a credible, trusted way. That positions us as nutrition authorities. Now to the third pillar, the future. Now, I don't know how you write about the future. Who knows, right? What is the future and how do we get there? Those of you who are getting ready to graduate, I'm sure you are thinking about this topic. And I know our panel that's going to follow up here has some pearls of wisdom for you because they've all done it and been in the same spot you have. But the future is something that it's hard to imagine until you're kind of there. But I spoke to a lot of people in this book, and read that last piece, that last pillar, if you read nothing else, because it tells you what people from Google thought, what dietitians who are head of associations thought, what agriculture and sustainability experts thought, what educators, retailers, and pharmacists thought, and of course, food councils thought. I found these interviewings so motivating, I didn't want to get off the Zoom calls. It became clear to me that you can do just about anything. It all matters what you want to do, what your passion is, and you have to carve out your own path. So how did I approach this? I approached it by using the findings of a summit that the Academy held right about the time of our 100th birthday. And we had 125 global leaders. We had it in Texas. They came in and they talked for 3 days and outlined what they thought the opportunities were for dietitians and for the profession as a whole. And I took the two big buckets and I said, okay, One big opportunity is what they call food systems. And the other big bucket clearly has to be technology. Who can talk about the future without mentioning technology? Well, food systems, one of the investigators says, well, think of it as an arc. It could easily be a continuum, but think of it along a line or in an arc. At one end, you have where we work today. 2/3 of our members, maybe a little less by now, work over in this one end of the arc. Hospitals, nursing homes, long-term care. All of those, congregate living, food service, public health, all kind of in that area. And that's not to mean that your job is traditional, but means your setting is probably much more in the traditional vein, and increasingly in wellness, Matt. You go over here to the other end, and it's where there's growth opportunities, because it's about food. It's about where food is grown, where it's harvested, where it's processed, where it's distributed, and where it's sold. And we have some members in that area, but we could use a lot more. So it's that arc of where those opportunities are. So my recommendation to you is to find, first of all, what you have a passion for. What's your interest? Line it up and look at that arc. And by the way, Carrie, do you have this? Do the students have that? Because you can get it on the foundation at eatright.org that can give you the proceedings from that conference. And look at that. Line it up. Take that food systems and line it up where all members we think have an important role to play. See what interests you. And if something interests you, dig a little deeper. Find out a lot about its background. And find out some people that are working in that field. And go volunteer or maybe an internship, something to get you into that field so you can create an opportunity. But I would start right there if I was starting out in your field and or in mid-career and you want to change something. Look at where your passions are and look at where all those opportunities lie and see what you can do to create that job for yourselves. I think you're going to see that the panel members did just that. None of them had one job. They all did many things. And then the other piece is technology. There's so many opportunities and technology. We see it all. It's Siri and Alexa. It's medical tests every day. I was just telling Dean Salisa, the Wall Street Journal, this Saturday's edition, had 3 pages on AI, for example, and technology in healthcare. Those are the kinds of things that'll give you some clues. I found it really interesting. I was reading about food and beverage companies that are using sensors in foods, not using human panels to develop whether a product tastes or smells right, at least in the early prototypes of it. And that eliminates, again, it creates much more efficiency and you can get to market further. AI, certainly in the news. I don't know what to say about it. We've seen lots of information about it. It has application to everything universities are doing. It has applications in many areas of science. Papers are written, advice is given, databases are given and developed by somebody. There was an interesting article in Wall Street Journal on AI and what professions are affected. I'm going to do something I told you not to do. I'm going to give you the top line of it. I tried to find more information, and I couldn't in time, but I'm still going to dig on it. But it says 80% of workers today are going to be in a job where at least one task very soon can be accomplished more quickly by generative AI. Least affected, they said, are short order cooks and motorcycle repair people. So if you don't interested in technology, try one of those 2 careers. Now, there is a wide range of excitement about AI and technology in general, and no doubt there's fear as well. And there's really no predictions of exactly where it's going. You have different views, and I'm a firm believer you can't live in the future until you're there, but you can get prepared. And what do you do to get prepared right now? You read, and read outside of your journal. Read into diverse areas. Read and talk to your friends. When you're having a glass of wine or a beer or you're having a cup of coffee, talk to your friends about what they see coming with technology. Talk to those who are in your organization. You've got technology people in your organization, talk to them. Ask them what they're doing. Or talk to like-minded professions that are in your area, OTs, PTs, nurses, medicine, pharmacy. See how they're beginning to look at these opportunities and prepare. You'll get the idea. Done this way, I am very optimistic we will find ways to showcase and show what we do and how important nutrition is and how important dietitians are. So what's all of this tell me by the time you've heard my views, and I like to call it my story? Nutrition authority requires us to look at lessons from the past, look at challenges and opportunities that we have right now. What's the big thing affecting us? And then look to the future. That's my story and my views, and I love stories, and I would just leave you with this one other thought. Jane Hertzfer, former editor of the Harvard Business Review, does a lot of editorials still in the Harvard Business Journal, and she talks about the importance of telling your story. She purports that bullet points of our careers can be turned into compelling stories. And I would add, they can help solve problems and point our way to the future. Thank you very much. And now our panel. I would call Sue Houston up, and now you're going to hear from people that are really doing it. Thank you. All right, Sue. Sue, who's had a job in a variety of positions at this university.
Thanks so much, Sue. It is such a pleasure to have you here. And, you know, I've been at BGSU for many years and certainly spent many years in the food and nutrition program as a faculty member. And over the years, Sue Finn has been to campus and inspired us many, many times. So it is truly wonderful to have her back here. I am going to now invite our panel members to join me here on the stage. And I'm going to do a very brief skeleton of an introduction for each one of them, and then we're going to open it up to a few questions. I've got a few questions, and then we'll open it up to the group for questions. Feeling we're supposed to sit and put the microphone on. Okay, yes. While we're getting settled, I'll start the introductions. Matthew Frakes is with us today after an exciting few weeks at LSU. His area of background is in sports nutrition. He has degrees from both BGSU and University of Mississippi, and his current position is Assistant Athletic Director of Sports Nutrition and Director of Football Performance at LSU. Andy Gonzalez. Her background and area is in pediatric and community nutrition. She has degrees from Michigan State and also Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio. And currently, she's the Pediatric Medical Science Liaison for Abbott Nutrition. Kay Mavko, clinical nutrition is her background, among other things. Her degrees are from BGSU and Ohio State University. And for many years, she served as the executive director of the Ohio Board of Dietetics and remains active in OAND and nutrition policy work. And Winona Bynum, public health is her background, Wayne State University, Emory University, and she is currently the director of the Detroit Food Policy Council and serves on the board of the directors of Diversify Dietetics. So we're welcome to all of you. So that's a very meager kind of outline of the backgrounds of the people sitting up here. And they all have very rich experience and great leadership. And what I'd like to do today is really ask 3 primary questions, and I'm going to frame it based on Sue's book, which is, background and history. How did you get to where you are today? What are some of your challenges right now, the current, present? And then the other category is what's for the future? So the first question that I have for each of you is, tell us more about how you got to this place, how you got to BGSU on April the 10th to be on this panel, and what was your journey, some of the important influences that you had, and what were some of the key decisions that landed you in this place. So I'll turn it over to you, Matt, first.
Okay, can you hear me? Is this on or no?
Doesn't seem like it's on. There.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So my background and everything was kind of I would say not traditional or kind of somewhat unique. I would say that honestly I didn't know if I wanted to become a dietitian or even what it was, if you will. So football is my catalyst to be where I am today. So with that being said, I was a student athlete here. I transferred from Ohio University and then came here after that. So I actually unfortunately had to stop playing here to actually help support my family back home, my parents, and then also my brothers and everything as well. So I'm the first person in my family to graduate and go to college and actually succeed in that fashion. So I wanted to actually be a trendsetter in that direction. So with that being said, that actually led me into figuring out, okay, well, I love food and I love cooking. So I guess, Coach, I don't know which direction I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna go into dietetics. So that kind of led me into that position there. So, but come to find out, that actually led me into actually like seeing that, okay, how can I actually combine food and nutrition and dietetics with actually sports and the game that I love. So that led me into sports nutrition, performance nutrition. So with that being said also, that there wasn't a lot of performance dietitians at that time, and sports nutrition, sports dietetics at that time at all whatsoever. So we actually had to look into having experiences and doing things as far as just building everything from scratch, if you will. So my time here, I used everything that I learned within the classroom with all of our great instructors here and also directors and everything that now were actually my professors and my teachers at that time, that I used that to do well in the weight room and do well on the field as well. So with that being said, I actually, once I graduated, I didn't know which direction I wanted to go. So I went into playing professional indoor football. That didn't work out. It was time to hang it up. So with that also being said, then that led me into, okay, I want to get my master's. So I actually got my master's through here, did the master's program first. So in my mind, what could I do? How could I get a job? What could I do with that? So I had to become a dietitian in order to actually feel like I could have a professional degree and utilize my professional degree. And that was just something that I wanted to talk to my parents about too as well, and talk to my family, was that, well, since I'm the first one to graduate, I might as well keep going. So got my master's through here. Went back home to Columbus, Ohio, worked, and then did all my rotations through the distance program there. And then alongside with that, once I got done with all that, I became a clinical dietitian, worked at Children's Hunger Alliance with the How Healthy program and helped some initiatives with that. Started my own as far as private practice and superior nutrition performance. So I made everything as far as like what I wanted to do with that, and actually worked at another facility there to actually help promote some of my friends that actually are playing elsewhere or going to the NFL or went to the NBA that used that facility there in Columbus, Ohio, as their training facility in the off season. So I was making food for them. I was actually, helping them out when it comes into making their plans and developing their plans in the off season to make sure that they're staying healthy, they're staying well, they're rehabbing and all that. So once I became a clinical dietitian, and while I was doing that also, that was the point where I needed to actually make another decision. So remember I said I'm the first person. I was like, well, there has to be something else. So actually University of Mississippi and Ole Miss had a position open up. It was their first graduate assistantship that paid for the doctorate. So had a great conversation with Melinda Valiant, with Dr. Valiant at that time. And then with that being said, came down there was the sports dietitian for baseball, track and field. And I looked at also my research studies was looking at how nutrition can affect concussion recovery. So I wanted that to be my niche. I wanted that to be like, okay, what is Matt going to be known for, if you will, when it comes into actually helping supporting my student athletes? and that was concussion support. And with that being said, maybe there was something that I had that wasn't diagnosed properly. We were doing a better job at how those things are actually being utilized and looked into, but I wanted to actually see how nutrition can affect that. And that helped me lead into now how can I actually develop the policies and protocols around it and actually enhance those things. So a lot of people now call me when it comes into looking at how nutrition affects concussion recovery and how they can improve those standings and improve their policies around that through supplementation and also nutrition and communication with the whole entire health and performance staff. So when I did that, I then went to University of Louisiana, Lafayette, was the associate director there, did that for a year. Went to University of Louisville, took a step down. It was time to actually get back closer to home. My father had passed at that time, so I wanted to be back closer to family. So was there for a year, and then actually out of nowhere, while I am with the women's basketball team in San Antonio during the bubble, that's when I got that call from Coach Kelly and also from Ron Paulus as well, from the athletic director at Notre Dame. So they called me, went down there, they offered me the job right away, and then I was there for 6 months. Found out that we were having a baby, found out Coach Kelly was leaving, and then he called me while we were in the hospital. He said, "Congratulations, put your wife on the phone." So, and then offered my wife the job for me. So, and then of course I said yes. So the biggest thing I would say that my challenges are, honestly, I am still trying to develop this and trying to figure out what we need to do as far as for innovation and performance nutrition. A lot of the times when you're seeing sports dietitians, a lot of the association is with food service management. So how do we align as far as with being in our profession and being a sports dietitian, a performance dietitian, whether that is reorganizing, restructuring as far as how those dietitians are actually utilizing their services and what it actually defines and what it means. So we now have one of the largest staffs in the entire country, where now we have 7 dietitians on staff, where we went from 2. And that's to serve all of our student athletes. We now have 16 as far as student workers that help promote and support our student athletes as well, so the dietitians can do their job and do their work. So now I'm just still trying to figure out as far as, okay, the next thing is how do we utilize innovation and technology around that sense? How can we promote what we're doing as far as dietitians? And how can we enhance recovery, rehabilitation, and performance in that capacity?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Andy?
Yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah, I'm a little nervous now going after him. But I think, one of the beautiful things about sharing stories is that I can relate. So I think it goes kind of well with my story. So I am a first-generation college student myself. I actually am and grew up in South Texas, so I don't know if there's any Texans in the area, but I grew up in South Texas, very small town, Palmview, and I actually got recruited through a program called the College Assistant Migrant Program. So it's for families that work in migrant farm work, and me and my twin actually got recruited to attend Michigan State University. So I lived in Michigan for about 12 years. That's where I kind of finished most of my study. One thing that I want to share is that, I too, it was difficult to understand and navigate that as a first generation, that college experience. So when people ask me what was the most difficult, was a PhD difficult, the master's difficult, internship, I'm like, no, my bachelor's of science was difficult because I didn't know where I was headed. And so it seemed a little bit more overwhelming for me. But the greatest gift that I think that I was given through that time was being able to network the faculty, and which I can see here, the faculty of just being there to provide that mentorship, that guidance, that coaching, because again, it really helped leverage my career path. One thing I want to share with the students is that there is more than one way or pathway to dietetics. And I'll say that again, there is more than one way to the path to dietetics. And the reason I say that, because Matt just shared that, but I did too follow a non-traditional path. So I actually received my bachelor's of science in dietetics from Michigan State University. Unfortunately, my father passed around that same time. I couldn't afford a dietetic internship because at that time there was very few programs that allowed for additional resources. And so I actually went into a master's program that was paid in public health through Michigan State University so that I could do that, but still with the dietetics in mind and my goal to become a dietitian. And so I did that for 2 years, saved enough money, and applied into the Michigan State University dietetic program and was accepted through that. I started my career, so I say that I've been in various places when it comes to the field of dietetics. So I've done inpatient, I've done food service, done community, I've done research, all which have led me to the path that I'm in today. As far as unique roles that I've been given the privilege to be a part of is that in 2014, I got the opportunity to start a retail nutrition program. And my understanding that there's various retail programs across the U.S., but this would be the first program in the U.S. that would actually be structured a little different. And what I mean by that is that we were one of 4 dietitians that was selected to be part of this program or started up to actually accept insurance. And so we all got credentialed as providers so that we could provide nutrition education or counseling in an outpatient setting in a retail store. So the classroom was basically the supermarket was basically our classroom where we would educate families around how to make healthier choices, but at the same time, that return of investment, being able to show our worth as dietitians. And so I did that for about 4 years, and through that time period, I decided, hey, one of the first, right? I did my master's, first in my family to finish college. My twin finished right after me, so I say we both kind of shared that title. First in my family to get a master's, and then the first in my family to pursue a PhD. My PhD is not in nutrition, but I'll share how it's tied. And so I actually got a PhD in organizational leadership through Our Lady of the Lake University. And my intent was that not enough nutrition professionals were sitting at the table. And so my goal there was my dissertation focused on food and nutrition healthcare professionals, specifically to Texas, because that's where I would collect my sample size or my population for my study, but really around authentic leadership and voice behavior. How many of us are actually sitting at the table? How many of us are sharing ideas, being able to have that authority, which goes really closely to Dr. Finn's book, around being there when it comes to nutrition policy, advocacy. And so I did that, finished in 2018. Through my tenure with HEB Nutrition Program, I loved it there, but then I really found kind of that point in my career was that I was like, I'm not really, what is that next step, right? I was like questioning, like, what is that next step for my career? And I found that through Abbott. So I now am a pediatric medical science liaison for Abbott, where I get to dive back into the science and the nutrition piece, and then really something that I'm really passionate about, which is creating partnerships and that connection, because there's so much meaning to that. Dr. Finn mentioned earlier, like the force of connection, and there is truly a force of connection, networking, being able to be, again, that authority when it comes to our profession. As far as challenges, so I wear many hats, and you'll probably see that through my bio, but I also started a private practice where it's focused specifically on bilingual nutrition education in Texas, specifically South Texas, in hope of being able to expand that across the state, because that's always a challenge for families that maybe speak Spanish and are looking for a dietitian that speaks Spanish. I help represent 6% of dietitians that are of Hispanic or Latino background, and then in private practice, it's even lower. And so my hope is that, again, being able to provide that resource. When it comes to challenges, I would say the challenge that I see in the careers that I am in today is advocacy around medical nutrition therapy, and then also research. There's not enough research. Like we as the Academy, I mentioned Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I serve as the past chair for LAHIDAN, which is the Latinos and Hispanics in Dietetics and Nutrition. I also sit as a Texas delegate, chair of delegates, which I'm finishing my tenure in May. But I think that, when it comes to advocacy, around research, advocacy around medical nutrition therapy for the students and even some of the faculty, like we need to, again, just voice what we need as a profession. We need a voice, when it comes to reimbursement, because that's the first line of really showing our value when it comes to patient care, even if you decide not to go into that space. And so I am one of those dietitians that really emphasize that we should have an NPI. All of us should, no matter what. Even if you're not practicing, that is really going to really be able to showcase like the value that we bring in all spaces of dietetics. So I want to close there. I can talk all day, but thank you again for just having me. And again, I want to be a person that you can connect with, especially our students. I'm always, willing to help our students that are kind of just trying to figure out what that next step is. Thank you.
That was really
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. That was really interesting. Well, I think what's gotten me here today is my last working job title, which was the director of the Ohio Board of Dietetics, which was the licensing agency for dietitians in the state of Ohio. Since I retired from that position, I have been, and even throughout the years, I've been very involved in advocacy efforts, both in the state of Ohio and at the academy level, particularly around licensure, but on medical nutrition therapy and other nutrition-related topics as well. What qualified me to sit in that job as the director of the Ohio Board of Dietetics, I think, was the varied background I had, both educationally and in my work experiences. I got a great education here at Bowling Green. It was at the time when the dietetics program was looking to become credentialed as an internship program. And when I first went into dietetics, I was told, well, by the end of the year, my graduation year, the experiences we were engaging in would be qualified as an internship, and you would come out with your education and your internship. Well, that didn't happen, so I was honestly a little disappointed, but I picked up an engagement ring that last year of my time here, and my soon-to-be spouse was at Ohio State. So I decided, okay, I'm going to head down to Ohio State, make that a permanent ring, and go to grad school. So I went to grad school and did a qualifying experience at Mount Carmel Medical Center to become registered as a dietitian. My first job was with WIC, and that was very much a learning experience for me because I'd never been exposed to individuals who had such passion for their children, who had such pride in the way they lived, and who lived in such poverty and circumstances that I didn't understand. I came from a small town. We didn't have the kind of issues that these women and their children had. So it was very much an awakening for me. And I realized that someone needed to advocate for these types of folks. I was involved in doing that in my community. And I also was very interested in the Ohio Dietetic Association and their activities because they were seeking licensure for dietitians. Any dietitians here, and I see a few of you, know and love our Pat McKnight, who's the mother of the licensure law here in the state of Ohio. And when the association was looking at licensure, they wanted someone who knew pharmacists so we could talk to the pharmacy association and make sure that they supported our efforts towards licensure. I happened to be married to a pharmacist, knew a bunch of people, and got involved in those efforts. So once we got licensure in the state of Ohio, the board picked a wonderful gal to be the director, Judith Mastrine, who did a wonderful job. I think she was there 15 years, something like that. And during those years, I moved on and worked in pediatrics, at Children's Hospital. I worked at The Ohio State University, both in patient education, management positions, selling a data system and food management computer system that the OSU had developed. I eventually became their associate director in charge of all clinical operations and the patient food service operations. Worked a lot with clinical dietitians, dietetic technicians, and had numerous experiences there that intersected with the Ohio Board of Dietetics, challenging some of the interpretation that they made early on related to dietetic technicians and the things they did in our workplace, and those types of things. I was very involved in the association, and I also was raising a family along the way. When Judy Mastrine quit at the Board of Dietetics, I had happened to meet someone at my daughter's school where she was teaching. And this individual and I was a dietitian. We got to talk. We were friendly. And it turns out she was the director of the chairman of the Ohio Board of Dietetics. And she and Pat McKnight pulled me aside and suggested that I apply for that job. So it was all the associations along the way, all the communications I had with people, being involved with the association, serving on committees, the various work experiences I had that got me in that chair. I didn't know anything about policy. I didn't know anything really about licensure, but I had a varied background. And I think that's what the board was looking for at the time. I learned a lot about politics, about policy, about advocacy in that job. And since I have left that job, I've continued my work in advocacy surrounding licensure and the other things that affect dietitians and citizens in the state of Ohio. Some of the greatest challenges along the way, I think, have been listening to people and listening in a manner that you listen to them and you're not trying to be listened to for what your opinion is. I think I entered some of my roles thinking I could convince people by listening to them, and I've changed that over time. And I think that's one of the things that's important about policy, is you need to listen to your representative group and advocate for them in a way that they want you to. I think that's what I've got to say.
Thank you.
Well, this has been really great listening. I'm like, okay, it's time for me to speak. Yeah. Am I on? Can you hear me? Okay. Yay. I just wanted to be dramatic. No, but I really enjoy listening to everyone's journey, and I think one of the things that is we all have in common is that it's stepping through the steps. Like one thing leads to the next. Dietetics is a second career for me. My first career was in IT. I did programming for a little bit. I wasn't great at that. So I was a very good project manager because I understood and I didn't want to program. So I did that for quite a while, was a software project manager and then worked in the program office as a subject matter expert. But doing that, I actually worked around the clock. I ate terribly. And I started to feel the impacts of that, although I didn't know that's what it was. Because so often we look at people and we determine if they eat well or if they need to change their diet. And at that time, I was, I guess, a healthy BMI, but what my body consisted of was not, because I ate a lot of chips and soda and so. But I had a manager who looked at what I ate because he could see me eating at my desk. And he knew that I was having a little, some health challenges, and I was still relatively young. And he told me that I ate terribly. And at first I was like, well, what's the deal with that? But I'm like, why not? I'll try it. And of course, as you all can imagine, as you know in this room, as I ate better, I felt better. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I was wanting to read everything about food, and I got the opportunity to go back to school. And at first, honestly, so I come from a long line of educators. My great-grandmother, my grandmother, aunts, uncles, sisters, cousins, all educators, so I thought maybe I would go into the family business of education. I volunteered to do that and realized that was not what I wanted to do. I did not have the stamina to really educate children in a meaningful way. But I took a nutrition class also, and I loved it. I took my textbook to bed. My husband thought I was crazy. I'm like, vitamin C, do you know what it does? And let me tell you about the metabolic pathway, and it was just really crazy. But what I knew was, okay, I found the thing that I want to do. So I got the opportunity to go back to school full time, and I really had the intention to be working in the community, doing more traditional nutrition, counseling, and things like that. But as I was in the community, what I realized was that I was privileged to be able to, when I wanted to change my diet, have the cash, have the transportation, have the ability, have all of these things to be able to change my diet, but not everyone in my community had that. And I lived in Detroit my whole life, but I still didn't realize the depth of the hurdles that people had to go through. So as I saw that, it changed my trajectory, and I determined that I wanted to work more in food access and food security to help people get that. I'm like, I can't tell them to eat a carrot if they can't get it, right? So let me help them get it. My first position in a paid position was with Fair Food Network. Their claim to fame is that they help bring double up food bucks, and so incentive programs to they're nationwide now, but at that time, it was 2011, they were, it was something novel, and they were trying to advocate for that. So I learned about advocacy working for them. I did on the ground community building work around food and food systems and healthy food access. And then I went to the food bank, and I was a manager of youth and nutrition programs. A couple of my programs were USDA funded. One of them was Summer Food Service Program, which is an amazing program that takes over for school meals and allows children to have food during the summer. But there was a big hurdle with that because there was only 16% usage. In Michigan, there's about 16% usage. It may have gone up a little bit, but at that time it was around 16%. So that did not cover all the children that needed free and reduced lunches. And so I was wondering why, but there were a lot of hurdles that a lot of our policymakers didn't understand. Most of that program is around congregate meals, right? So you have to get to a program. The problem is a lot of children in need, they are at home with their grandmothers watching them or aunt or older siblings, and they are not in programs. And so to bridge that gap was difficult. And we did some workarounds at the food bank. We did mobile units and things like that, but still to bridge that gap was really difficult. And so it started me thinking about the policy. Because when I talked to folks at the USDA, and I had the opportunity to do that, everybody there wanted to feed children, but they didn't understand the problems on the ground. So when the position at the Food Policy Council opened up, I'm their first executive director. I went for it because I knew the importance of policy, and I also understood that as a registered dietitian, I had a unique perspective because I would really be thinking about the science of, what are the most important things and how do we bridge this and really, what type of foods should young people have and all of those things to bring that. And so that is what I did. When I started in 2015, when I would ask in a room how many people had heard of food policy councils, can I ask that right now? How many people have heard about food policy councils? Yay. See, I would not have got any hands in 2015, so the fact that I'm getting a handful of hands is wonderful, but we need more nutrition professionals to know that there are things called a food policy council. We're one of more than 300 food policy councils around the country operating. Most of them are from a governmental or health department. We are a standalone nonprofit. But we need to be at the table at these food policy councils talking about food system issues. The wonderful thing about food policy councils is they bring together, as Dr. Finn talked about the food system, people from all over that continuum. And so you're able to talk to farmers and retailers and producers and chefs and nutrition professionals that work in schools. They bring them all together to talk about how the food system can be different. So I won't go on and on about food policy councils, but to say that I hope that some of you think about either volunteering or leading one or working for one. Since I've been there, I've had quite a few dietetic students to work with us. And most of them, whether they want to go into policy or not, it has broadened their perspectives. So the other question was about the challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges to, I think, all of us is that to show that authority, right? Because we really have dedicated time to studying the best ways of eating, and that can be in any kind of cultural background. So it's not like a particular thing, but to really look at patterns of eating that will serve people well. But because everyone eats, a lot of people don't understand that we really are a science-based background type of career, and that what the value that we bring. And so the more that we're out in community, the more that we're able to talk to people and to show them how we can really add value to their everyday lives, I think that's so important. So like I said, the big challenge is to show that we are an authority. And also the other thing is that so often when people talk about food, they think more about emergency food or just hunger or the food on your table, and not about the food system as a whole, not about long-term planning, and not about how policies can really impact our whole food system and the well-being of all of our community members. So with that, I'll stop also. Thanks.
Thank you. It's, wonderful to hear these stories. There is not a straight path into, I think, what anyone has done here. I look at my own experience. I started out in clinical nutrition and, worked in a hospital for a number of years and then decided to go to grad school and, really got into nutrition science, and basic research and so forth, and taught as a faculty member and did research. And then someone one day asked me if I wanted to be an associate dean. And I thought, well, that might be interesting. And, went into higher ed administration. So, I think that there is not a straight path. At BGSU, we've got this new initiative that we're rolling out for all of our incoming freshmen and undergrads called Life Design, which is, elements have been around for many years. It's design thinking. But an awful lot about that framework is to prototype, to experiment, to network. And, we've got this great group of young professionals in the room here. And, one of the really important elements, I think, is, we move on in our careers, and is certainly an important element in Sue's book, is that we've got to be prepared and work hard, but we also have to be really open to the opportunities that come our way. And I guess what I'd like to ask the panel members, and each one of you don't have to respond, but I'd ask if you have any examples of surprises in your career or things that you did that created opportunities that you really had not imagined up to that point.
I'll go.
I saw your eyes light up.
So when I was getting my dietetics degree, I had a space for an extra class. I took a cities and food class, and it was a seminar class where leaders came in the food system. but I didn't know how a dietitian could fit into the food system and outside of the traditional ways. But it was by taking that class that the job that I didn't mention, it was like a really brief job working for Michigan State University, helping them put on a conference around food systems. And I was just, doing logistics for it. But I met so many people. And that is how I got the Fair Food Network job, by just being there, being in the room, in a role that was not glorious and not glamorous, but it allowed me the face-to-face time to talk to people, which is so valuable. If you see somebody who you think they're doing something interesting, ask them about it. Most of the time, people are really open and willing to extend a hand or tell you how you can help or that type of thing.
I'll jump in. So I would say what's been really surprising in athletics, how you get your position and actually how you're working within athletics as well, depending on how fast you go. I feel like my career has fast-tracked based upon the network that I've been able to build. Because every single position that I have had has been because of a strong referral from someone within administration or someone within the actually coaching staff that's put me in that position to make sure I had that position as well. So, and it's not to say that I feel like that I'm a very strong as far as performance dietitian, so it's not saying that I don't know my stuff, but at the same time, everyone has been able to back my hiring or say why they need to go with me in comparison to another individual that went for that same position, or the position was not even available or open. So before that position was even open and publicized, it was already filled because they have already contacted myself. And the same thing with those dietitians that I've worked with, at some capacity I have ran into them in my career. So we have a team that we have is based upon all the great work that they've been able to do across their careers. At some point of me, either they was a student worker of mine, or I've heard nothing but phenomenal things about them from what they've been able to execute and accomplish in their careers. So I would say that's been one thing. The other thing is too, honestly, the surprise of actually having that doctorate and having my PhD within athletics itself has been able to put me in a room to be able to advocate so strongly and so fast about pay for our staff, and then also of things we wanted to get done. Because now it seems as if, and when I'm talking to my counterparts at other universities and other Power 5 universities, other professional organizations, whether that's NFL, NBA, no matter what. So they're always asking, Matt, I don't know what you're doing down there, but and how you got there so fast, but just keep doing it. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think it's truly because of that background of having the PhD, the research behind it, and then also being able to be invited in those rooms to have those conversations and articulate what exactly that we need as well. So, and then also the actual private practice itself has been able to help me organize and have that business mind of how we need to actually have within our organization that same feel, that same structure from a business perspective. That it goes a long way from having, as far as if you're speaking to someone that's in that position, that's a director or an assistant AD position that don't have that background, it's kind of hard to articulate exactly how you're going to manage and how you're going to organize and structure and detail your department. You can tell what you need, but if it's not making dollars and cents to what they're seeing and what you say, if it doesn't add up, or the dollar value, they don't know, you have to speak in their language, you have to speak in their terms. You truly have to understand their terminology and how they actually speak as well, from academics and also from administration, because it's all different. So being able to talk with all of them and be able to build those relationships has actually helped us been able to fast track everything so far that people in my position in the past have not been able to successfully do, I would say.
I'd like to say, too, that I have found that it's very beneficial to broaden both your personal network of people from a variety of backgrounds, ethnicities, genders, business relationships, and also from a professional perspective. Don't just go to the dietetics meetings. meet with other professions. You know, try to network with as many people that you work with as you can. And think about ways that they can cross over, particularly in advocacy efforts when we're downtown at the State House or on Capitol Hill trying to talk to our Congress people. These are just regular people from everyday lives that have everyday jobs back home. And they're not generally going to be dietitians. There's not many dietitians in Congress or at the State House. So it's important for you to have comfort in the way that you can talk to people, the way you can convince them and educate them about what it is you do, the things that you think are important, and the things that will improve everybody's lives.
Yeah, that was great. I echo what everybody has already said, but I think when I look back as a student, which has allowed me the opportunity to work in various spaces, is taking that risk. Like not being afraid, being courageous has allowed me to move into different spaces. So I mentioned earlier that, you know, I moved into a retailer who was starting up a program. So oftentimes I had to find a seat at the table when there was a seat already curated for, you know, somebody like myself. And so I think that as students, just thinking outside the box, dietitians today are moving into various spaces which we didn't think before. We usually call it non-traditional, but I have a colleague that says, no, don't say that, Andy, because, you know, it's endless. Those possibilities are endless. So I'm trying to change that language, but, you know, just really thinking about how we can make an influence in various roles. So I have the privilege, and I'm very fortunate to work for a company that sees the value of nutrition and dietetics. I think that taking that risk as far as my PhD, it's not in nutrition, but it is in leadership that allows me to, again, right, really be able to have those conversations. But in essence, you know, when I was in that retailer, right, like just making those opportunities, right, taking that risk, being courageous, if one door closed, trying to look for a window, trying to look any space where I could show that value of nutrition and dietetics, I think it's really key. So for the students that are in the room, and even for myself, you know, I tell people I'm not done yet, right? Like I think that, you know, as dietitians, that we also have to keep pushing those boundaries of where that could lead us, right? When it comes to nutrition and advocacy and food policy and even sports nutrition, I'm like, yeah, we need to connect after because, you know, the university at home, right? They're like, Andy, why are you, you know, poking there if that's not even your area? But I'd love to see our university. They just opened up, they're opening up a football program, right? Like, how do we show the value of a dietitian moving into that space? Not me, but, you know, for somebody else, right? Because there is that value. But for the students in the room, like, take that risk. You know, don't be afraid. You know, you have various faculty here that is willing to support your path. And so take advantage of those networks and those connections.
You know, you've touched on a number of themes that I think are really important as we look at the important work that needs to take place today, but also as we look to the future. And, you know, one of them is that, you know, we have to get out of our silos. I mean, I have the privilege of working on, you know, new programs sometimes at the university. And really, you know, the interdisciplinary nature of programs and training now is profound. And many of you have a path of that collaborating across disciplines is really how the work gets done these days. And I think that is what will happen in the future. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and you know, you've mentioned several themes, I think, in talking about your stories, but I'd like to go back and see if each one of you can articulate what you think the most important issues of the nutrition and dietetics profession are right now. Okay, try to keep it to the present. I've got a future question in just a minute, but if you had to articulate that, we've talked about reimbursement, and that's been a long-standing issue, but what's your perspective on what the big challenges are right now?
I guess I'll go. Because we have so many different areas that we touch and that we're in, it is, from my viewpoint and talking to the students now, it's more so of a with each one, and because we're still developing those areas as well and how we impact those areas, a direct path and a direct direction of how to not only make an impact within that area, but actually advocate within how your pay reflects upon the services you provide. So because it seems that those that are within those different areas as well, that makes a decision on the actual dietitian that comes into that space, do they actually have a true understanding of what they are investing in? Do they have a true understanding of who they bring into that room to provide the service? Do they have a true understanding of what is the service that my dietitian is actually providing? So that way I have value within that individual, or I know what this individual has that they can bring to us and bring to our organization, bring to our department, no matter if it's in, as far as in athletics, no matter if it's in the hospital as well, no matter if it's in the community as well. I think there's a disconnect, in my opinion, there's a disconnect on the people that make a decision around that and how they view our services and how we provide those services.
I think it was talked about already, but I think Winona talked a little bit about, just because we eat food, oftentimes it's really easy for various healthcare providers and non-healthcare providers to talk about nutrition, right, and provide that, whether it's education, medical nutrition therapy, or just in general information through various outlets. So I think that as we think through how we bring that value, one of the opportunities that I really think that we still need a lot of work in is that collaborative approach as far as interdisciplinary care, right? Just really understanding how we can all sit at the table, whether it's a pharmacist or a physician or occupational therapist, right? Like PT, right? Like how do we continue to have those key relationships or that collaborative approach? Because the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has done phenomenal work to really bridge those relationships, but we still need to do more, right? Where they're seeing that value so that if a dietitian is not in the room, right, that's somebody, it's a natural language for them to say, hey, you know what, we're talking about, XYZ, and this falls more in the space of a dietitian. Let's bring him or her into this conversation. And I don't think we're not there yet. And so I think, you might challenge me and be like, well, how do we get there? Well, that's where the advocacy piece comes in. That's where we really continue together, right, at that grassroots level, really unionize. I think Dr. Finn said that earlier, right? Like how do we, not unionize, but how do we create that union voice so that we can come together and really speak the value of what we get to do every day is valuable, whether it's in community, whether it's inpatient, outpatient, retail, industry, wherever you're at, right, and the great work that you're doing, how do we continue to leverage the role of the dietitian? So that's my 2 cents, and again, that's my own personal view.
This is probably not on the top 4 items, but it's one that I'm thinking a lot about lately, and I think dietitians are. Prior to the pandemic, because states license health professionals on an individual state-by-state basis, the rules, the laws, the regulations, state-by-state, differ dramatically. And that's based not generally upon what the profession does, what they do to perform their activities. It's really based on the whims of the legislatures that write the laws and what political environment they're writing those laws in. So the state's laws and rules vary quite differently. Prior to the pandemic, in most states, dietitians could not provide nutrition. And during the pandemic, we had found that we needed to flex a lot. And most states did write exemptions permitting health professionals, including dietitians, to provide teletherapy and telenutrition specifically for dietitians. Now that the pandemic has wound down, a lot of those laws and regulations are returning to pre-COVID positions. and we're going back to being constrained and not being able to provide telenutrition. I'm lucky enough to be one of 20 individuals that are representing the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics on a technical advisory group where we're looking into development of a dietitian licensure compact, which will affect licensure for dietitians, allowing dietitians to have one license and be able to practice in multiple jurisdictions of those states that belong to a compact. Nurses have compacts, physicians now have a compact. We're looking at that. So that's one of the things that I think is important and is high on my list right now. It's probably, like I said, not one of the top 4, but it's one of those things that I think will be beneficial. It's going to take some convincing and advocacy to convince our legislators of that worth, but we're feeling very positive about it here in the state of Ohio at this time.
And so I think it's pretty well covered, but I would just say again, to raise our profile and to have additional people to recognize our authority and to grow our ranks, find a way to have additional dietitians, because I think we could be in so many avenues of the food system working, and I think the more of us there are, the more people will recognize our value, much like they do nurses or doctors, to really see the value that we bring to the community.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to have one more formal question for the panel, and then we'll open it up to questions. So, when we all gather in 2033 to celebrate the 10th year of Dr. Susan Finn's book and the 2 or 3 other books that she's since written, what will we be talking about? So this is the future question. What will be important in dietetics and nutrition, and where will we have evolved to, and what are your thoughts about the future?
Well, I can solely speak on, I'm focused on the impact as far as how dietitian impact performance, nutrition in itself, recovery and rehabilitation. So in that setting alone, I truly do think that at the rate that we're going, and then also even with it being in this novelty, that dietitians in this space will actually have an impact in how technology has advanced and also how data is utilized, how we collect information from our student athletes or from our athletes, from every single part and component that we actually collect from when it comes to body composition, when it comes to lab analyses, when it comes into HRV and sleep health and everything. The dietitian will actually be someone that is actually a part of that integral component and will develop something as far as what else needs to be collected within that space. So that way we can have a true value and true impact there. So with 10 years from now of what we collect and how we can actually have a management system, or how we can observe and see how an athlete or individual can perform and how they recover, we're actually going to have more to be able to say exactly what is being recovered, exactly what is being as far supported, and exactly how my position here is important. If I am not in this room or if I'm not at the seat, it's not going to happen. That you don't just talk to the strength conditioning coach, you don't just talk to as far as athletic training, you don't just talk to the sports medicine physician, but the dietitian alone can make a direct impact on these particular components, and we can see that.
That one's a hard question, but I'll add my 2 cents there. I think for me, that something that's top of mind is that with our current kind of situation with the White House conference on hunger and nutrition, my hope is that because it's allowed for our profession to have a seat at the table, that in 10 years we'll be able to demonstrate that value. So I'm really hopeful in some of those efforts, those collective efforts with our state government or our U.S. government, right, as far as really being able to have that trickle effect even through our state government. So I'm really involved with the state of Texas affiliation, but just really recognizing that value, is something that I foresee hopefully being able to, again, just really show the value of dietitians and what we have to offer. And then as far as AI, I don't know. I was testing the AI platform just recently in, was it ChatGPT, and just kind of figuring out, what our students use. I'm a part-time instructor at a local college in my hometown, so I'm like, what is all this fuss about? And even in private practice, I put something as simple as, what are the recommendations for medical nutrition therapy for cholesterol? And then it just, in an instant, started pulling up some of these data points, right, for, with that kind of request or the algorithm that it kind of brought together, this masterpiece for me. But, I think that we're definitely going to be moving into that space as far as technology. And so I think in 10 years, we're going to be using platforms like that. We're going to be using, whether it's systems. I still am very hopeful, though, that it still needs that human element for validation, because even through that ChatGPT, as somebody that is in research right now, there's limitations on what the data points that they're pulling from, and so there's low quality studies that it pulls from, so it still needs that validation from that human element. So I think that there's still going to be jobs for us, is just figuring out how do we work alongside that fast track of technology and how it could really help the people that we serve every day. So that's kind of my 2 cents there.
I'm going to focus on the AI concept as well. I think not only will be AI opportunities expand beyond medical nutrition therapy and sports nutrition, in the food service, in the data collection, in analysis of the success or failure of programs. I think we're also going to be experiencing challenges in the ethics of the use of those algorithms and of that data and of the decisions that are made based on AI. So I think it'll be challenging. I think in the world of politics and advocacy, that will be challenging as well, to bring that understanding, and for legislators, whether they're at the state level or the congressional level, to make wise decisions that will affect all of our health and well-being for the future.
Okay, and I'm going to go with everything that my fellow panelists have talked about. I think in 10 years, dietitians will be in demand. We will be trying to determine how we can get more dietitians on the floor fast, because there are so many job openings, and that hopefully the importance of food to well-being, to economy, to health will have continued to raise. I see that importance is taking forefront, and that it will continue to be. The profile of that will be raised. So I'm looking in 10 years that you will be so excited that you picked this career, and that you'll just be trying to decide where you want to apply your skills.
Yeah, thanks. Sue, you want to join us? And let's open it up for questions.
Now's your chance.
Yes. And Dr. Hamady has given me the heads up that there's some expectations that you're all going to ask questions.
Hi, my name is Lydia. I'm a senior dietetics student. I just want to say thank you so much for being here today and taking the time to be on this panel. And Dr. Finn, we all appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. My question is actually in Winona's scope of practice. It's about food systems. So as dietitians, how do you expect that we need to step towards policy and creating a change in regards to the health of our food system, as well as the sustainability, because of the rise in obesity that is expected in the next 10 to 20 years?
So being involved, like I said, find out who's working on food policy and food systems issues in your community, and insert yourself. And then show your value as everything that you'll bring to the table. A lot of times there are a lot of just popular sound bites that people don't know what to do with them, and we can help them put it together. And we can also talk about things that will bring about a healthier food system, like putting more money towards specialty crops, which are fruits and vegetables.
I was going to say, I think we all need to get involved at the community level. We need to support farms, our local farmers. You know, farms are dying off. We need to get children working with their parents to have home gardens. And if we start there, I think we can make a dent at least for the future.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kelsey. I will be a dietetic intern next year. I'm very passionate about food and culture. I lived a couple of years in a third world country, and returning to grad school, I kind of realized a lot of people have great ideas for helping those with hunger and in poverty, but don't understand the culture behind that. And specifically in thinking about public policy, have you seen any of that taken into account when trying to create policy? I was in a class at a different university before I transferred here, and that was a question, and I saw all these great answers, but every single one I was like, that's a great idea, but you have to think about the culture behind that. So is that something you've seen in your public policy work?
I have. In the Columbus, Ohio area, we have a large Somali population, and the Columbus Public Schools, when they changed the way their food service operated, had no understanding or made no considerations for food service for Somali population. And especially, again, when COVID hit, it left those people in the dark. So there have been a couple of groups that have reached out, and a couple of dietitians who have done that to get involved and try to improve that communication. It takes that. You know, when you identify an issue and you see it, finding a couple of people who have some knowledge from that country, from that area, and can impact it, it's kind of an opportunity you can't let pass you by. But be careful, because it'll get you called the next time there's another issue.
Okay, let me also add one other thing. If you look at what the Academy is doing, they're doing a lot on culture. The Academy's foundation has fellowships and grants and projects they're doing to get our members more exposed to different ways of doing things. So take a look at you're a member, you'll be a member, so take a look at the foundation website and see if there's not something there that also will help you in that. They're big emphasis on that.
I want to add there too. Thank you so much, Dr. Finn, for that, because I think, you know, one way that we could expose to other cultures and just some of the resources that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics already has is learning about the member interest groups as well. So I mentioned earlier that I am part of the Latinos and Hispanics in Dietetics and Nutrition, and so, you know, being able to provide services specifically for that population, or dietitians that are coming into the field that you know, are looking for a place, right, to be able to have that mentorship and guidance. But aside from that, there's a lot of resources that we provide that I think that could be another resource when working with specifically, you know, Hispanic Latino communities. You know, and again, there's some other member interest groups. I know, Winona, that's how we got to connect and collaborate as well. And then, you know, then there's also, I think it's considered a MIG as well, is the global MIG as well, which again, a lot of their efforts around, you know, just that culture, right, that consideration. And then also, if, you know, thinking about culture, supporting some of the efforts with the Academy when it comes to IDEA, or inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And so I feel strongly that we all have a place, we all have, you know, kind of, you know, a unique offering that we get to be able to offer for the field of dietetics. And so if we're able to create more access points for all populations to move into the field, I think, and we can have, you know, allies, or now, you know, I've heard also, you know, different terms used, but, you know, if we have that allyship of being able to, you know, bring more diversity into the field of dietetics, it's really going to help us reach more people in a way to really be able to have that impact in their health. So I hope that makes sense, but those are just some current resources that the Academy does offer as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I was also talking about culture, like obviously like other nationalities and stuff, but what I see a lot of undergrads not understand is like just culture and maybe like inner city areas. They don't understand that. Like I've met kids that have never seen a carrot, like things like that, where people are like, we want to do these policies, but then they're like, oh, these kids don't even know vegetables, like things to work on with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you. I think that just that cultural relevance is so key. I'm one example. I didn't see spinach until I was in college, right? Again, I'm Hispanic Latina, right? I grew up with chile, tomato, onion, just some of those key kind of vegetables in my home, right? But it's just like, how do we continue to expand that knowledge base, right? And the way that we do that is connecting with people in our community, right, that might have those shared experiences and really being able to widen the field of dietetics, and that's through diversity, inclusion, access, and equity.
And can I just add that the member interest group, I'm the immediate past chair of NOVID, and we worked closely together when we were both chairs. You don't have to be a member of that group to be a member of that group. So you don't have to be, right, so, and the thing that's important about that is that you can bounce those questions off of people and even get a different perspective. So a carrot, maybe they have yams or sweet potatoes. So then that's their equivalent. So finding those ways of honoring people's food patterns, as you talked about, and still getting them the nutrition that they need. And that's why it's so important to have a diverse field of dietetics so that we have those people to bounce things off of. I know I went to school with a lot of people from the Middle East, and they helped me with what do I do around Ramadan and talking to maybe pregnant women and those type of things. So it's really great to have those resources, and I'm glad that you're thinking about that.
Yeah. You all know there are DPGs. Those are our subject interests. I think there are, 28 of those? Then there are the special interest groups, like Labidan and Nobadam, and they're in a variety of different areas. And then there now are the affinity groups, which are around subjects like reimbursement that cut across everybody's. So there's a variety, and of course the key is you all have to be members of the Academy. Remember that.
Hi, my name is Samantha, and my question, well, we all know in 2024 we're going to be required to have a master's degree to sit for the registration exam. I want to know your opinions on this and whether you see this to being a barrier for future dietitians and students who might actually turn away from studying dietetics because of the intensity of requiring a master's and the 1,200 hours of unpaid supervised practice, and just like financially what you guys think needs to happen to be able to keep encouraging people to join, because that could also be a barrier for diversity as well, for those who may not be in the best financial situations and are struggling to afford undergrad as it is.
Let me take a shot at that, okay? This has been a very large topic, as you can imagine. When you look at the growth of science, and you look at the growth of the profession, and you look at other professionals, you gotta have a master's in order to compete. You just have to in that front line. That's not to say there shouldn't be assistance for others wanting to come in, people, and there's a big movement apart to get those kind of helps to people that can do it. But we've got to make sure the science, and you got to have a degree that competes with the others. So, the Academy is very well aware of this, and educators have really, really worked on this. And so there is a great effort to get support for people that would be and could be and would be qualified to get through the program. So there's no question. That's a big issue.
Do you think that any of those systems are going to be in place by the time that many of us are going to be graduating?
No, I think you'll find it moves very quickly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, things are moving very quickly at rapid speed across the board. So I think you'll find it all evens out. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I worry too, so I can understand where you're coming from. I mentioned earlier that, financial system was a barrier for me pursuing the field of dietetics, and I mentioned earlier, I am, represent 6% of Hispanic Latino dietitians, so I do see that a possible barrier, but I also see what the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is doing so far to be able to maybe address some of those issues.
Yeah,
I encourage you to look at the New Future model. There's a lot of programs that are already kind of on their test pilot. So like in the area that I am from, in Texas, University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, they do have this New Future model where it allows that joint effort for a master's and an internship kind of packaged together in a way that it helps you financially to be able to get your master's, do your internship within a reasonable, affordable way. So I do encourage you to look at some of those programs as an opportunity for those students that are looking for different ways to, again, if maybe financial, it might be a challenge for you.
And Nobadan, Lahidan, all of us have been working with the Academy to raise scholarship opportunities, to raise money, because we are worried. Black dietitians, there are 3% of us. So 3% of all dietitians are Black. So we're very concerned, and everybody is working together to meet those needs. I know there was also, the Academy had been working with Diversified Dietetics on some initiatives to help with that as well.
Thank you.
Another one. I thought all these questions would be on sports nutrition.
Hi, my name is Rima Bakir. I came from the Middle East to follow the dietitian trip, I would say. In my home country, there's not a lot of graduate number in the dietetic program because it's only 2 questions when you start doing your dietitian or nutrition. Like when you are a nutrition graduate, they ask you 2 questions. Or you're lucky now you know how to cook. Or the other question is, can you tell me how to lose 20 pounds in 10 days? So this is the only 2 questions that we get. They don't know the whole other part of the clinical nutrition. They don't know about the research that all nutritionists are doing or the dietetics are doing. With the respect to the physician roles, in Jordan, when I used to do the rotations in the hospital, we would just follow the physician, and then he would do the diet plan and then just give it to us. And the only role that we had to do is just go to the kitchen, make sure that the patient got the right diet plan, not another one. How would we convince really a graduate student to purchase, to be a graduate, a nutrition graduate, if we're ourselves in the, I would say in the training, we're getting just following up the physician and doing stuff like that. And also, I had another, I would say private hospital that I got trained in. Now the trend of the surgery is to lose weight. They're not following any more diets. They would say, well, I will just go do a bypass surgery and that's it. I know that it has to be BMI, there's BMI recommendation that it has to be, but when it comes to private hospital, they would just take the money. They don't care about any other thing. They would lie about the BMI, and then they want just to get the money in order just to keep it going. So how would we encourage the new graduate students to the nutrition field if this is what happening, when we are doing? Trust me, half of the graduate student in my home country doesn't know that there is a registered dietitian exam or there is RDN. They just know about nutrition. They just take it and then they go to the hospital. They just follow up, as I just mentioned. And I am now a teacher. I get a lot of questions from high school students. What is your degree? Oh, nutrition. That's why you're here. You're teaching us nutrition. We can search things up. That's why, my only answer is, that a lot of people did this research, spend a lot of time doing this research. Then there is an important role for the dietitian. I don't know if I had too many questions to say. But yeah, this is a lot. That's why I moved from the Middle East, just to to be here when there's a lot of things going in the nutrition world here?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So the thing is that for our future dietitians in here, for us to continue improving our field, it takes for your experiences of what you see are limitations that we need to change. So with having those observations and experiences and seeing those limitations yourself, you start formulating ideas on what can be done to get those changes done. And then you have to have the courage enough to be involved. So a lot of the times that we're having as far as with a lot of these complications that we're seeing, no matter what area that we're seeing within our fields, is due to the fact of that we see these complications, we see these issues, and then what action items are we having to counter those issues and counter those things? And that takes time. That takes time and that takes consistency of actually being involved and actually having conversations around other folks and other people that are in other areas to see if you see there is an area such as like the physicians as well, like what are they doing well to have the respect and the value in that particular setting? What can we do as far as to bring into our own field to have a similar impact or have a similar outcome? That's an action item as well. It's just like in our field for like in sports nutrition, if you will. So our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, whether that's in CPSDA or whether that's in the academy as well, is working together to make action items in order to make change and to bring in value and to bring in diversity within the field, to bring in diversity within the setting so you can have representation, so you can have solutions and outcomes. So that's for everything that you're seeing that's a limitation is now coming together collectively because it takes you all to communicate. It takes you all to think. It takes you all to converse with all of us, even up here, to find out what are some solutions that we can do and what can we formulate to make a change. So we have to speak up on those things as well, like what you're doing now. Yeah. So then now is the process of us discussing and having ideas, and that's the point of having innovation within our field as well too. Yeah. So that's where we come together now, come with a solution. Yeah. So there's not one solution within that loaded question, but that it comes with all of us now working backwards or working towards that solution, towards that situation.
Yeah, that was the concern. Like, yeah. I am here, but there's a lot of graduate in my home country did not get the opportunity to be here to listen what you're saying, like to this motivational speech. Like, there's a lot of things. I am now doing a research about we're fasting now Ramadan, so yep. We're having those diabetic patient that they want to fast, but they have that insulin shot that they want to take during the day. Stuff like there's a lot of things that need a lot of research to work. And I know my grandparent, he is too religious, so he doesn't care about whatever the research says. He would take the insulin shot right before the sunrise to start fasting, and then take the other one after the sun set when we are allowed to eat. So there's a lot of things that I would be happy to work on, but I cannot convince the other mind in my home country. While we do have a lot of researcher, we have a lot of nutritionists, we have a lot of professors there that doing the job, but I'm talking about the future generation that they are coming.
Yeah, I think the MIGs can also serve a really great point or advocacy or support group for some of the challenges that you just mentioned. So like our India MIG, at the university, we have actually a student that right now I mentioned earlier, I co-own a private practice, and she's actually from Jordan. And one of the connections that we made with her was that to get involved with the India MIG, because I am not educated in that area, right? And to be able to support, and that honestly has been such a great group and organization for her, because it's allowed her to really find other professionals in the field of nutrition that can understand those needs. So she's working on a specific project. So her area of focus or work that she wants to do is that in our area there's not enough resources, and so she's helping with that group build some resources so that she can take home to her community. Exactly. So I think that again, just those connections are really key. I know you've heard it from all of us. Just get involved, right? The issue is probably very multifactorial, but even just starting with that first step is going to be key to help us move forward.
Yep. Find your allies.
Yes.
So look for somebody else. Somebody else has to be thinking about that. So find who that is and collaborate determine on how you can work together. And I may be seeing you, that's another thing, in 10 years, we'll be like, this issue is solved. I remember when she talked about it.
Yep,
So
hopefully.
yeah, find your allies.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank our wonderful panel. A round of applause for the panel. Great conversation. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Dean Jim Ciesla, who has a couple of announcements and I think is going to carry on with the program from here.
Thanks very much. It seems to us that this is a good time to recognize leaders in our own nutrition and dietetics program. You'll notice in your insert there's a couple students that I'd like to highlight and recognize. And then once we've done that, we have a very special award for faculty member. So the Emerging Leader Award recognizes one undergraduate and one graduate student. Well, this is, you guys can hang out if you'd like or whatever. Oh, it's okay. Oh, sure. Who made distinctive contributions to the dietetics profession during their time at BGSU and the Food and Nutrition program. In recognition of their nutrition authority and to encourage their continued leadership as members of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Foundation is providing $1,000 awards for each leader to attend the 2023 Food and Nutrition Conference Expo. So let me start at the graduate level. Claire Tibbles, if you'll raise your hand. Thank you. We don't have anything to give you other than to recognize you, sorry. Claire Tibbles is in our Masters of Food and Nutrition program and recently passed the registered dietitian exam. She's been very actively engaged in service to the BGSU community stemming from her program. But I'd like to highlight, outside of BGSU, Claire has published her recipes in the newsletter for the Academy's Cardiovascular Health and Wellbeing Dietetics Practice Group. Among her greatest demonstrations of nutrition authority, though, is with her master's project that focuses on reflections of dietitians, students, interns, and early career professionals in the LGBTQ+ community, higher education to workforce. Thank you very much. Congratulations to you, and thank you for standing. Our undergraduate emerging leader, Mackenzie Corder, where are you? Hello. Just recognized. Mackenzie is a graduating senior, soon to enter her dietetic internship, and again, very, very involved in the nutrition and dietetics program while here at BGSU. Outside of campus, Mackenzie is on the Ohio Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics social media team and presented her research at the American Society for Nutrition meeting. Among her greatest demonstrations of nutrition authority is she's the co-developer of the Plant Your Seed Nutrition Education Program for elementary-aged children in the Toledo area. Congratulations. Dr. Ludi has a special award in recognition for a member of our faculty in food and nutrition.
So I have the opportunity to recognize a faculty member, Dr. Wen Shen. Dr. Shen, where are you? Please come up here. All right. And I am recognizing Dr. Shen for the Elliott L. Blen Award for Faculty, Undergraduate, Student Innovative, Basic Research, and Creative Work. So I will read you a description of this award. It recognizes innovative, basic research, and creative work conducted by individual faculty members in collaboration with undergraduate students and supports collaborations with additional students. This is a presidential award given in memory of Dr. Elliot Blinn, a professor of chemistry who devoted his career to sharing with his undergraduate students the excitement of the process of discovery by directly involving them in innovative, basic research and creative work. We thought this Nutrition Authority event was the perfect place to recognize Dr. Shen. And I want to tell you that just this year, Dr. Shen has mentored 9 undergraduate students for projects. If you are an undergraduate student who has done research or capstone project with Dr. Shen, can you stand up? Dr. Shen has also mentored 2 graduate students this year. If you're a graduate student who's worked with Dr. Shen, can you stand up? Additionally, Dr. Shen has advised 20 undergraduate students. If you are one of Dr. Shen's undergraduate student advisees, could you please stand up? Dr. Shen, if you can come up, we have a plaque for you. Congrats, Dr. Shen. Yeah, all right. Dr. Stiesler, back to you.
Back to your insert, you'll notice that we have a class activity for you. I'd like to ask Drs. Finn and Judy Buddy, our member of our Board of Trustees, to lead each of you in developing a Nutrition Authority plan. We have about 30 minutes to do this. If you'd like to come up, Sue and Judy. The idea being that we'd like to guide you through and perhaps see if we can get some of your ideas after you've had a few minutes. And if you'd like, let's go through this. Take the challenge and new opportunity that reflects the profession of food, nutrition, dietetics. Reflect on the questions, how will we make our mark and shape nutrition for the future? What must we do to grow and promote our authority as trusted professionals? How do we leverage that authority into dynamic leadership? Please write your authority plan below using SMART goals, specific, top box, measurable and achievable, relevant and time-bound. And what we'd like to do is just be a little informal here. Maybe some members of the panel will help as well. We're going to mill around and listen, and then give you maybe 10 minutes or so, and we'll call and see if there's a few folks who'd like to come up to the microphones and share what they've written. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say and how this all evolves. So take a few minutes with folks at your tables, and we're here to help, and here we'll be milling around and chatting with you. If that's okay with y'all? So. Okay, I hear some good conversations going on out there. I've invited our guest speaker and one of our honored guests, Judy Buddy, there we go, to kind of help us amalgamate some of your ideas that you have. Carrie, you both grab microphones. Okay, switching glasses. Just a second here. I'm not a big fan of bifocals. SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Would anybody like to share? Carrie will find you. Really, just toss it out. Our idea is to react to what you found.
So please say your name first.
Okay. Okay. My name's Caitlin, and one of my goals is that I will join and be an active member in a member interest group during my dietetic internship.
Very good. Very good, yes.
Let me see here. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and you'll do that
Time-bound.
soon. Time-bound.
Yep.
Okay, good.
It fits.
There we go. We got it.
Hi, my name's Maggie. So I said I will be confident in joining different meetings, especially interdisciplinary ones, so the field of dietetics will be advocated for, especially during like internship in my career.
Very good.
You know, I see a really, how many of you have participated in the College of Health and Human Services interdisciplinary education events? I'm guessing quite a few of you. If you'd be willing to comment on the importance of IPE. I think sometimes people get confused with interdisciplinary with post-disciplinary. The idea is that there's a culture in your discipline, and there's, of course, very significant disciplinary knowledge. But interacting early and often with folks in other disciplines is important, so you can build an understanding. There's no such thing as providing health care in what we now call a silo. Doesn't happen. So comments on that from our guests.
Is this on?
I think so.
Okay. Can you hear? No.
Did I not turn it on? There we go.
Absolutely. And in fact, if you look at medical schools, they have preached for quite some time to be interdisciplinary, listen to other folks. Years ago, I was on the faculty at Ohio State's med school, and there was a whole effort written, it might have been dropped after a while, but it was on teamwork and learn what other health professionals are doing and looking at how they can use them. It was based on a Milbank quarterly report. And that kind of came and went. And now, we now know you can't solve a problem in and of yourself. You have to join forces with others that have access to the people you want to meet and the patients you want to see. So absolutely, you need interdisciplinary team efforts, and reaching out to your colleagues in health sciences and health services, absolutely critical.
Well, and I would just add that that applies to really anything you're doing, because my work now is really outside of dietetics. So whether you're building a building and you need to talk to the architect and the interior designer and the finance people and the banker, or any project you're working on that could be food service management or anything else, it's really stepping to the table, recognizing the skills and expertise of everybody at the table. You have a voice as well, sharing that, listening to that, and then coming to really, I mean, we talk about it as interdisciplinary, it's also collaboration.
That's right.
And that's the best thing about dietetics, is it teaches you from the beginning that you're a member of the team and you can apply that to anywhere you work in any type of dietetics, and then how you collaborate with others to achieve the best decision.
Carrie, go ahead.
My name's Jaden, and I said I will speak up in clinical and community settings to assert my expertise in the field in internship and also in practice.
Very good.
Good.
It's great.
Excellent.
Great.
If you don't mind, I'll pitch out a question. What forums? How will you do this?
So I'll go ahead and talk about something that happened this semester. I shadowed a dietitian, and we got to kind of be a part of the like interprofessional meetings that happened. This was in a clinical setting, like the interprofessional meetings that were happening weekly to talk about new patients. And I think just like asserting what we know in terms of nutrition for these patients is really important. Just so people will come to us, they're going to know that we're a valuable part of the team, and so that's something that I'd really like to get practice with as I go into internship and then again into the field.
Comments?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, speaking up, that shows the strength of your voice. And, you know, you ever been to a meeting when there are people sitting around that don't talk, they don't express their view? They kind of fade. And so where appropriate, you want to be a strong voice. And I think that's a wonderful goal.
I would just add, you know, bringing solutions to the table and not always just here's the problem is a really great idea. And I think, Andy, you mentioned, feel comfortable, even if you are not the subject matter expert, step outside your comfort zone, step outside of where you think you have the most knowledge, take a risk, I think that's the word you used, and participate on a different committee or a different team. So that's how you grow, and then that's how they start to recognize that, yeah, you have knowledge here, but that knowledge applies to these other areas as well.
Thanks, very good.
Hi, my name's Cassidy. Our table, we talked about during each year of our practice, collecting data on the outcomes of the interventions that we are doing in a hospital setting or wherever we are, really to just further show the strength of evidence-based practice and also furthering the protocols and guidelines in the facility that we work in and to show our importance. So, thank you.
Excellent. Great idea.
Yes.
And that's exactly what needs done.
I would just ask if you give that data to somebody and they don't do anything with it, then what do you do?
Right.
Just think about that because, you know, telling one person those outcomes is great, but you want to do something with that, right? And you want change to happen because of that. So what would be the next step?
We also discussed using that evidence. We talked about the M&T Act a lot. And just the disease states that aren't included, using that research that we collect to show that, you know, these are issues that are happening. These are things that people, disease states that need to be covered by insurance and Medicare. So.
If the data is good, you ought to submit it to the journal.
Yeah.
And you ought to also, right before that, talk to Ellison Stiver about what you're doing with, she's head of the research team. She's based in Cleveland. Talk to her about what you might do, and she will have some suggestions for even ways to strengthen that.
You know, I'll share an impression as a non-dietitian. I was particularly struck by the section in Dr. Finn's book that says causality. It's in the area of the book that talks about history. Give it a look if you have a moment. Basically, it talks about the way historians, and I think eventually anybody who's interested in evidence synthesizes knowledge and then eventually comes up with a validated truth and then the ability to communicate that truth. But I thought the passage, it struck me, and I highlighted it in my book. I left it down there, but it's worth a minute.
Thank you.
Others?
Over the next year, I plan to get involved with community nonprofits in my hometown. I do a lot of nonprofit work already, just ironically none in nutrition, and just working with some of the already established organizations that are within our community, and over the next 3 years, being able to advocate for them for the funding that they need for these different programs.
Great. I like the longer range goal too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So community advocacy. How many of you have had any doings with the Falcon Food and Resource Pantry, the food pantry? It's a nice way on campus to begin forming those skills. It's what you'll realize behind the scenes of our space in 109 Central Hall is a whole network of similarly interested and committed folks in the food and distribution of food in this region. And I think that to me stands out as an example of a way to join, and then eventually, you know, I'm no philosopher, but leadership isn't handed to you. You go grab it. Join an organization, get to know other people who have similar interests, and start moving things along.
Hi, I'm Bethany Dario. I own Divergent Dietitian in Perrysburg, Ohio. So I'm an eating disorder provider and specialist, own my own company there. And my goal for 2023 is to double our income before the end of the year, and we are on trajectory to do so.
Excellent. Very good. Reimbursement.
And I don't know, do you want to speak at all to reimbursement or because that seems to be like a big issue.
I am a cash pay provider. So right now my business takes just private pay for individuals who are coming in. We do offer what's called super bills for clients who are coming in for recurring treatment, so who are coming in weekly or monthly or however often they need for our services. And what that means is that I can put down the procedure code and the billing code and I work very closely with a lot of physicians and clinical providers as well as therapists to receive the diagnostic code that's needed. And then an individual can submit that to their insurance and seek personal reimbursement with what's called a single case agreement. So they're just trying to get reimbursed directly, but we do require payment at the time of service. So it's definitely very limiting to individuals based on their income, and it's a large barrier. But unfortunately, right now, eating disorders are not something that are covered based on DSM-4, DSM-5 billing codes. So there's a lot of work to be done in that area with lobbying and advocacy. I do have maybe 30% of my clients that receive some kind of reimbursement, but it's pretty limited. So it's something we're continuing to advocate for.
That's an admirable goal. And it appears to me that that's something you really need to be engaged in with respect to the reimbursement pictures, because there is a very complicated disease.
MJ, thank you.
Hi, my name's Rochelle. I live in and work in a very small community. And so I would like to work with other professions in my community to become a voice for food and nutrition in the public health sector within this next year. Because there's many meetings that they have within the community health department that there's not a dietitian that's sitting at the table. So I'd love to be that person to sit at that table and have a voice for our profession and to help our community.
That's great. Make that first phone call, invite yourself to a meeting. If that's not the right meeting, call the next person.
Yeah, exactly.
An example, do you have a organization or a particular group that you think you'd approach first?
Yeah, actually, the United Way in our community is a big part of that. And so I actually have a connection there. And so that's where I want to start with that.
Yep. Good. Else, anybody? Dr. Hamday's heading somebody's direction.
He is. I see you're moving.
Hello, my name is Lydia again. So something that we learn about, Dr. Ludi and Dr. Hamady really nailed this into us, is mentorship and having relationships with our mentors. So I said, I will maintain my relationships with my mentors throughout my entire career.
That's great. That's great. I was sharing with one table, you know, you do realize that your first networking are all of your classmates. And when we graduated, we didn't have easy ways to stay in contact. So I lost all of them. But if I had to do it again, knowing and being connected to those individuals who are already out there, you already have a network of 30 or 40 people who will do amazing things in their career. So stay in contact with them, and your group will just grow from then. So it's fantastic.
I would give you one other example. After I had finished my master's degree, I got a call from a Bowling Green faculty member that I had studied under, and she said, I'd like to have you come up, teach a class at Bowling Green once a week,
and worked with me on a very large public health program called Project Head Start, and because she had a contract here. That was the contact with the mentor.
You know, quick question. Anybody, what's the difference between mentorship and, or mentoring and teaching? What's the essence of the difference? We use these terms as if they're different, at least mostly, but anybody.
They're the same.
Pardon me?
To me, they're the same, but they may think differently.
So when you mentor someone, you're able to kind of walk with them through their journey and follow them through their progress. And I mean, I'm going to use Dr. Hamady as an example. When I first got here, I had absolutely no direction. I was coming from a mathematics major, coming into dietetics, and she has been with me even though I made my entire schedule. She doesn't necessarily have to follow me anymore, but she has followed my progress. She checks up on me. I mean, you have this connection with this specific person, and it's not just telling them information and then you're gone. It's you're following them through their progress and you're continuously checking up on them.
So it's longitudinal and more individually focused. You guys are great. And anybody else? Oh, here we have it.
Well,
Okay.
to add on to that as well, I think mentors can teach you things, but teachers aren't often mentors.
Right.
Just like supervisors are not always mentors, and you can mentor people that are your peers or outside of your own work group, even if you're not in their profession. So title does not always mean mentor, you're right.
If there's no other comments, thank you all very much for participating. I think this is a good section of this of the event. This is a very nice segue into the, we're a little ahead of schedule, but that's fine. Dr. Finn will be giving some closing remarks. And
I got to get my notes.
oh, sure. And then, of course, after that, you'll notice that we have a table set up here for book signing. I suspect in the line to get your book signed, Dr. Finn would be happy to hear some of the things some of the impressions you have of her work. And I think it's, it'd be a great opportunity to interact one-on-one a little bit. We'll have to keep the line moving, of course, but nope, these are mine.
Well, what can I say? I've got to close without my notes, but I can do it. It's been such a delight to be with you today. I thought our panel was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I mean, they did their homework. They knew what they were going to say, and they're very experienced, and you're very lucky to have them. Thank you to all the faculty as well that put this program together. I would just leave you with one comment. Do any of you remember the movie? I know I'm looking at the age of you. I know you don't remember the movie. It was called The Dead Poets Society. And it was Robin Williams, who was a teacher in a private boys' school, elite private boys' school in upstate Vermont. And Robin Williams plays the role of this English teacher, John Keating. He had very unorthodox ways of teaching. He'd jump, a typical Robin Williams, he'd jump all over it. And when he taught, he really wanted students to kind of feel it. And so he was teaching poetry. And he took these young men, gentlemen as he called them, took them out in the hall, and he had them look at the portraits of famous poets that lined the wall. It was Keating and Yeats and Shelley and all the famous poets that are iconic in nature. And they all had different messages. The poems were all very different. The experiences were different. And then Robin Williams, or John Keating, the poetry teacher, brings them back in the class. And he says to them, now what is the difference? Why are some of these iconic, others maybe fade away over time, but these are really people you remember, yet their messages and their poems were so different. What's happening here? And they would discuss this. And he says, and he looks at them and he gets up on a desk as he often did, and he starts talking to them and looking at them, and he says, I want to give you an assignment. I want you to go home and ask yourself, what is my verse? What am I going to do? And I guess I would add that to you. What is your verse? And I would add to that, what is your voice? Because when you look in the back, in the past, when you look at what you're doing now with all the challenges, you've got a great future ahead of you. Thank you all very much. It was great being with BG Friends.
Yes, thank you everyone for attending, and also thank you to the Academy and Nutrition and Dietetics Foundation for support in this event today as well. Dr. Finn will be over here at this table to sign books if you want to make a line. We'll get started on that now. Thank you.